Well, welcome. I'm delighted to be here, and I guess looking at the crowd here is proof positive that with the right incentives, people will respond with enthusiasm. So I'm really happy to see you all here. In these kinds of venues usually go through the bio of the speaker, but that seemed like not so interesting. So in light of the peaceful transition of power we just had in our government, I thought I'd just go through some similarities between our president-elect and our speaker tonight. They both hail from the state of New York. And that's pretty much all we can say about that. I guess I shouldn't be wandering around. I used to lecture here, and I like to wander around. Am I out of the? Okay, I won't do that. Anyway, rather, I would want to compare or draw attention to a scientist that has something which our speaker tonight share, and that's sort of the father of American geography, Carl Ortwin Sauer, who in an essay he wrote in 1956 entitled "The Education of a Geographer," was promoting this idea of getting the students out of the classroom, out in the woods, and to get the feel for the country. And he was promoting this idea of how these excursions should be, well, the locomotion should be slow. The slower, the better. And often interrupted by leisurely halts and sit at vantage points and stop at question marks. So, given the athletic prowess of our speaker tonight, I think he would usually move at a little quicker pace than what Professor Sauer would have preferred. But over the 3 decades that he's been running around the woods with scientists all over Alaska, he has certainly had his share of leisurely halts, of sitting on a variety of neat vantage points, and having stopped at many question marks. And we've been on the receiving end of his communications of all these travels that have been imbued by his curiosity, his insights, humor, and wit. And tonight, then, we probably will be privy to some of those vignettes from this remarkable 3 decades here at the Geophysical Institute and in the States. So with that, I'd like to yield my time for our speaker, Ned Rozell.
Thank you, sir.
Don't call me sir.
Don't call him sir. Hi. Thanks, Knut. That was very cool. I chose Knut to introduce me because over the years I've been out with many scientists in the field, but I counted them up. I counted up all my stories. Jim Brader was a bunch. But Knut was the leader. He had me out like half a dozen times. A lot on the Tanana River and other places you may see. So I am Ned. Welcome. This is the giant peninsula we've all come to settle on. And if you're here on February 4th, you're one who stayed, right? Nobody's here snowbirding right now. That's my E-Series map, which I have on the wall of my guest cabin. I've had it for many years, since before I came to Alaska. So I draw a new line or section or a little dot or a circle when I go somewhere. Keep adding to that. I am not an Alaskan. I'm not from Alaska, although I have lived here most of my life. I'm from where this little smiley face is from, in upstate New York. That's where I grew up, but I was not born there. I was born here on Manhattan Island, in Manhattan Hospital. Born there, then my parents went up to the Bronx for a while, and here's a picture of me there. I was looking at this today and I said, man, my hair is going back to this. Isn't that perfect? Full circle moment. I said, yep, that's where we are again. The Air Force brought me to Alaska. I was at Aleutian Air Force Base for a year and a half. And I wanted to come here because my dad had got me, I was just curious about Alaska. But my dad bought me Coming Into the Country by John McPhee, which many of you have read. It still holds up in the Alaska canon. And I was pretty jacked up to come up here. So yeah, I was a year and a half at Eielson. And then I went out in Mississippi and came back up here. Drove my little Ford Courier back up here. And had my school days back here at UAF. That is me when I was not much older than my daughter. Now, I was a little bit older than she was. But I've been at UAF forever. And I love it here. I still love it. I go to Wood Center for lunch. Have Williams stir fry, the best meal at UAF. I had it today. So I'm still going to Wood Center, even though it's not 1987 anymore. A big turning point for me for staying in Alaska was getting a job in 1994, good Lord, at the Geophysical Institute, which is the building here with the dish on top. That's the LV building where most of the scientists are housed. And next door is the International Arctic Research Center, the Akasofu building. My current office is in the library there. But the Institute was established in the late 40s because there were problems with the aurora and communications, and Congress thought we should figure that out for HF radios for our military men and women. So it's been a powerhouse ever since then, and it's been a great place to work, sort of recession-proof. I've been the beneficiary of that. Here's a man some of you knew quite well. His name's Neil Davis, and he was a real do-it-all guy, space physicist by trade, but he filled in as seismologist or whatever interesting thing was going on in Alaska. He would go out and investigate it. He had a lot of interest. That's he and his wife, Rosemary, in the right-hand picture. He died a few years ago, but one of the many things he established, including Poker Flat Research Range, which is out there in Chattanooga, which he pretty much made from the ground up, he proposed, after a history professor, Klaus Naske, said, the public needs to know about science. There's more and more scientists here. So why don't you start, first he said a TV show about science. And Neil said, no, TV would take too long. I like to write. Let's do Ask a Scientist column in the newspaper. And so that did fly. He started it in 1976. The Newsminer started carrying it then. I found one in February, so maybe I made a mistake here. February 76. And the Newsminer has run them ever since then. That's about 50 years. It's been every Sunday. So credit to them. They are getting it free, and they still get it free. So he started that, and he was doing it as a scientist, and other people other scientists would fill in for him. It was very short, and but after a while, it was taking up too much of his time, so he would hand it off to other scientists who liked to write, and a few of them did it, and eventually they hired a writer to do it. And they have continued hiring writers to do it. All these men, they're not the writers, they are the directors of the Geophysical Institute since 1976. There have been others before Mather. But these guys, including Bob McCoy, who's director now, continue to pay the writer, even though I'm not bringing in much cash for the Geophysical Institute. But they still, my year-by-year contract, they keep signing it, so lucky me. This is a woman who preceded me, Carla Helfrich. I loved her writing, and I was a park ranger at the time, Yukon Charlie, and I saw an ad in the News Miner for this job, and it was her job. And I said, oh, I love her stuff. I want to apply for this job. So I did. So she sort of mentored me, coached me in the beginning, and her favorite saying was, when in doubt, cop right out. I've used it 1,000 times. Usually when I'm writing something and I'm not sure if I got time to check it, it's like, just leave it out. There I am, 1994, looking exactly the same as I do today. What are you laughing at? Of course I look exactly the same. Yeah, so when I started, it was all newspapers. The digital era had not begun. So I started in 1994, right? That's me coming in. Newspapers booming. And then they started going downhill. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe I was just lucky to get a really unusually stable, fun, free writing job at a time when the digital era came on and newspapers lost all their advertising revenue, and a lot of them couldn't adapt. Who in here gets the paper? Probably, yeah, this crowd is biased, more than half. Wow. Who didn't get it after it rained for a few days? Yeah, we kind of missed it. We forgave them, though. Who wanted to drive in that stuff? So, yeah, lucky me. I've been lucky to have this writing job because I've seen a lot of other writing jobs just sort of evaporate. Good Lord. So being that the Geophysical Institute has sent out this free vetted story every week, it was a really good fit for the digital era where all these papers sort of went online, especially the bottom left one, Anchorage Daily News. When they came on board in the 90s, it upped readership of the Alaska Science Forum by, what's their circulation, 600,000. So when they came on, that was pretty cool. So me, yeah, 30 years, same job. Who'd have thunk, right? 50 stories a year, a lot of stories. So probably about 1 million words about Alaska so far. I'll let you read this for a second. It was a letter to the editor of the Anchorage Daily News in August 2019, which I was shocked and pleased to read. I don't know this woman. Mary Lou Burton of Homer. I wrote her a note after, and she didn't even respond to me.
Hey, some of us are getting old. What does it say?
Okay, I'll read what the meat of Mary Lou's argument was. The University of Alaska Fairbanks Geophysical Institute gig was perfect. A well-paying job with benefits, the best being able to combine two passions, writing and playing outdoors. And I thought, yep, you get it, Mary Lou. Thank you. Back to my E-series map. I'm going to take you guys to a few places around the state here. So I was counting up on our Geophysical Institute website. We have all the columns. Someone typeset them all. And now I put them in the last 10 years or something. So I could go through every year and I could see, okay, I was in the field with Canute this week. I was in the field with Jim Brader for 3 consecutive Januaries. You remember that, Jim? We went to Snag, the coldest place in North America. February 3rd, 1947, which was yesterday. What was the temperature, Jim, at Snag? No, the record for people. Minus 81 Fahrenheit it was, beating Alaska by 1 degree. And then we did a couple other January ones on Chinooks. We took trips and did measurements. Quite fun. Anyway, along with those trips with Jim, 86 field trips over those 30 years. It's a lot. I'm sure you see your name in there. Better look quick, because it's going to be gone. Anybody know who this scientist is? Very good. That is Ed Plum, suffering on the Seward Peninsula in a big wind. We did a ski trip across it, and that's when his rough was useful. So there's 2 people in this room who have a real connection with this story. I was happy to see them come in. I got 2 stories from going out with these people in the field. And they're near and dear to my heart because it's what I really like about Alaska. I learned through this execution of this story, these 2 stories. It's about this creature, which we still have healthy populations of, right? Awesome. Who's been on the Nugget Creek Trail or the short Mastodon Creek Trail? It's off Chena Hot Springs Road. It's a really neat sort of broad valley going to the south, where the South Fork of the Chena comes into the main Chena. It's a story about a wolf. That's where the cabin is. It's at the end of a, 8-mile trail. It's really neat, kind of a lot of flats, a hillside there. So one February day, 2014, 10 years ago, Sharka Meyer, can you raise your hand, Sharka? She's back there. She, did you take this picture, Sharka? Most likely. She was mushing 2 teams of dogs, right? With her daughters, her 2 daughters, who went to the same school as my daughter. And she came upon a wolf on the trail, and it was frozen on the trail. Frozen solid. So we're at Watershed School, and she tells me about it. And I said, that's unusual. I've seen very few wolves in my life. Be cool to go out and see that. So this wolf was on the trail. They're looking at it. The trail's very narrow, as it would be right now, I guess. And Sharka was puzzled. There's a dead wolf on the trail, how to get there. But she wanted to get to the cabin because she rented it, right? She couldn't get the wolf off. It's big. It's frozen to the ground. How'd she do it, Kristen? How'd she get to the cabin? Yes, they mush right over the wolf. Yeah. So there is the wolf and one of our former dogs, Poops, who had a lot of adventures with us. So it's a big female wolf, just dead, and you see like a hole in its back, right? Mystery, very mysterious. So the man in front there is sitting right next to Sharka Meyer. She's Sharka Paraguay now because he married her. They weren't married. I don't know if they had met at this time, but Tom was a biologist who was interested in going out there to recover this wolf. And there he is recovering the wolf, the frozen wolf, with Mike Terrace. Tom retired from the Department of Fish and Game and Mike still works there. So it was really cool. We're out there. We pried up this frozen wolf, Tom did. He's skiing it out, and no one knew how it died. What would be everybody's guess how this wolf died on a trail? I heard everything there. Starvation, old age. Who said shot? Yeah, Bill Stringer thinks it got shot. And that's what the biologist thought initially, because it's on a trail. It's like people are around. Why would it drop right in the trail? Mystery. So Tom brought it in to Kimberly Beckman here at the Alaska. She's a wildlife veterinarian, and she does necropsies. She cuts open dead things and tries to see how they died and if they're diseased or whatever. And at this point, 10 years ago, she'd already done like 400 wolves. So she knows her stuff. She's amazing with a scalpel. I have a video clip here that's a little graphic, so you could turn your head or close your eyes and just listen to her talk. But she here solves the mystery of what killed this healthy, probably 5-year-old female alpha wolf.
This right here, and it's ripped and torn. We'll see more when we get it skinned out, but that's a real common MO for wolves. They'll bite the throat, and I've had them where they want, especially if the whole pack comes on them, one will grab them here and the other ones will grab them here, and they'll just shred them.
So did you get that? What killed the wolf? Other wolves. That was a surprise to me. I said, wow, cool. Why do wolves kill other wolves? When they get in packs, pack size from 2 to 30 or something, that group is so tight they get intolerant of each other, of another pack. So part one of the first story I did was the mystery of it, bringing it out with Tom. And the second part was getting with Craig Gardner, who was another biologist at Fish and Game, who's also retired and has a ton of experience with wolves in the Tanana Flats. And Craig's quote was, when two packs meet up, there's going to be a dust-up. He said there's always going to be a fight, and it's not the puppies who fight. It's the two dominant ones, the ones that can get their mouths on a moose's neck and take it down. So it's often pretty damaging to the pack when they lose one of those. So yeah, his theory was there was 2 packs of wolves that met out on the Nugget Creek Trail. The big ones fought, and that one died. And our dog, Poops, who you saw in the earlier photo there, saw something weird out there. She was kind of older there, so she would always stick to the trail. But all of a sudden, we saw her veering off trail. So I said, new snow had fallen, so I followed where she was, and there was a pathway, this tiny little path packed in. And then on the hillside there were all these pillow indentations, like probably 10 of them. So that's maybe where the pack was. Either her pack was like mourning her there, or the victorious pack was just kind of bedded down. So interesting and cool, and the thing that I love living in Alaska for, right? Because where else did that happen? Huh? Okay, I'm going to move you on to Lituya Bay in southeast Alaska. It's sort of on the outer coast. Really hard to get to. One of the only harbors from Yakutat to the Juneau area. I went out there with Dan Mann, one of the most interesting scientists I've been with, meaning like he does all these studies on what Alaska was like 10,000 years ago that really catch my interest. So I've only been out with him a couple times, but it's always been a really adventurous trip. This one was extremely adventurous in that it was really hard physically. There we are. We're landing on Lituya Bay, where Dan has been poking in and out of for 50 years. He's probably been there more than anyone else I know of. There's Dan right there. He digs a lot because he wants to see if these terraces right off Lituya Bay, which are probably only 20 miles from Lituya Bay, but very hard to get to because you got to climb through rainforest to get there. He wants to know if people scrambled over there when they were populating the Americas. He said, Siberians got to South America somehow. How did they do it when there's ice all over the middle of North America? And this might be a pathway. So here he's looking for an old wooden paddle or something. No, he looks for other clues like volcanic ash and stuff to see how long this land has been above sea level. But incredible place. That is a Sitka spruce. Just giant trees, giant bears, and really, really hard walking to get from the beach to those terraces. Comically bad trail. This is Ben Gagliotti, who was falling down on top of me. Just vertical climbing you have to do with, of course, no trail or anything, and you can never see your feet, and things are always slapping you in the face. It was just really hard. But we'd get to places like this. This is where they wanted to get these raised terraces, 2 benches. And Ben was interested in these cool trees. This is a mountain hemlock that is tortured by storms, and he cores them, and he sees when in winter these storms might have happened. So 1958, there was a big zig in this tree that shows that there was a massive low pressure system in the Gulf of Alaska that caused a big storm that whacked this tree, and they survive and they keep growing. This tree is 200 years old. And this is where we're camping, this sort of Shangri-La, like nowhere else I'd been in Alaska. You'd wear, in the foreground there, that little bush is a pine, these friendly little shore pines, lodgepoles, which don't grow too many other places in Alaska. And it's a real squishy muskeg, like you'd want rubber boots, and it was hard to find a dry spot for the tent, but very sort of mystical. And this dude, I was just having dinner above Justice Creek, which is near Lituya Bay. I'm talking to him, I see something out of the corner of my eye, and there's this raggedy wolf that, I don't know, he looked like we felt then because we were really beat up. Take you to Iditarod. Is Iditarod southern route this year or northern route? Anybody know? Southern route, so they'll go through Iditarod. One year, because I heard there were public use cabins between McGrath and Shagaluk, 3 of them, they're like White Mountains cabins. You don't have to reserve them, they're just there. Thought that'd be a feasible ski trip. 185 miles, take about a week. So I enlisted Bob right there. This is Bob on Saturday. We skied the Yukon Quest. We skied from Pleasant Valley store to home. Left my truck there, and we had fun. So Bob was on that trip too. Bob was also on the Iditarod trip. It was just me and him. So he was game for it. Bob's a geologist who works for DGGS on College Road here. And he's a real hardy guy. I nicknamed him Nails Gillis, because he's so tough. He's tough here because there's no snow to ski on. He's got to carry his skis. We were in the Anchorage airport, and I saw the Anchorage Daily News. We were going to McGrath to start our trip, and I see the Anchorage Daily News through the little window thing, and it shows mushers going over tundra. So I got one. It says, there's 80 miles with no snow, like right in the middle of our route. I was like, shit, I wanted to ski that. It turned out being like 18 miles. It was a little hyperbole, but we did do a lot of walking. It's one of those public use cabins. This is a kind of a historic Don's cabin. I like this one. It was good. The other three that are well spaced are they're like White Mountains cabin or Chena River Rec Area cabins, and they're well spaced. Trappers were using them also, though. This was after the trapping season, but you could tell like they left their peanut butter in there. And there was a revolver right on the desk in one of them too. We didn't take it with us. That's another cabin. This is an Ophir. Kind of breezy. Pretty Alaskan, huh? We didn't stay in that one. Iditarod is cool because it's not on the way to anywhere anymore, right? You got McGrath, not a real big village. Takotna, not very big. Ophir, nobody's there. Nobody all the way to Iditarod. And then Shagaluk's also not a big village. And it's centered on the Innoko River. Iditarod's on the Iditarod River, which flows into the Innoko. And the only time people are there, I don't know, maybe there's some miners out in Flat. Flat's where all the gold came from. But it seemed pretty quiet. This is a historic picture. Its heyday was 1910 or so, and it's on this stranded slough of the Iditarod River. It's not even really on the river itself. That's what it looks like today. It's an amazing ghost town. Like you go into all these buildings, there's all this printed material that you crave to look at, and the wallpaper, the fabric wallpaper is still there with floor print on it. It is so cool. That's what it looked like in 1910 when there was probably 10,000 people there. That is the existing, what they call shelter cabin, but it's what, like Iditarod, will base out of their headquarters. There's a couple other serviceable cabins, but this was a really cool one with a lot of neat reading material inside, and you really felt like you were somewhere quiet. So we roamed around our ski booths. We had an extra day there, which was awesome. Roaming around all the buildings, and this is the stuff I love. I love the ghost village aspect of it. Yeah, got that trunk there. And yes, that is what it seems like. 2-foot thick walls. Iditarod is kind of like Fairbanks. It's not where the gold was. It was where it came through. And there was once, at one time, there's 2,500 pounds of gold in this vault. And they took it by dog sled to Anchorage. And you can even crack that safe still. The coolest thing about this, and why I included this in my cool memories, is me and Bob, we skied / walked in there. Iditarod had just left. The last musher had left, and the people who helped, they fly in, they fly out. So they had flown out. So nobody was there. The stove was still warm, kind of. So it was just us, and we had that extra day. It was so nice to have that day to explore, but we weren't the only ones there. There were wolves who were in the old town site. Like we were in the middle where that good cabin is, where there's not a lot of buildings. But the wolves were amid the buildings and stuff, and they were howling. And the northern lights came out. And we're in Iditarod. It's like, that's our moment. Take you up to Coldfoot with this man right here who just introed me. Canute has studied mammals and trees and a lot of other things for a long time. And one year he said, hey, you want to come up and trap lynx with me? I said, sure. That'll be my birthday too. Remember that was my birthday? Yes. So he live traps them and he puts collars on them so he can tell where lynx roam. And lynx go a long way. Where did the farthest lynx go from Coldfoot Canoe?
To the mouth of the Yukon.
To the mouth of the Yukon. That's a long way from Coldfoot. So they do these crazy trips. Very cool animals. A lot of them were on Fairbanks a couple years ago, right? Everybody's got their lynx story from a couple years ago. And here we had success, and it was pretty quick, right off the bat. What'd you put, a ptarmigan we found on the road or something, a grouse that got hit by a truck. And he baited the trap with that. A lynx was in there, and it was all chill, really mellow. I was surprised it wasn't jumping around or anything. But Canute went up and he poked it, anesthetized it, and he put a collar on her and let me hold her so he could see how big she was. She was big. He was hoping she would have babies. This was in March and April. He was hoping she'd have babies that summer and he could find where she'd end up because he could tell because the collar would stop moving. She did not have babies, but she was all over the valley. She did not go to the mouth of the Yukon. The red is the Dalton Highway, and the big river there is the Dietrich River. And she didn't go too far, right, until her collar popped off. And he said it popped off in a bad place, that he had to go get it. But that was the summer of her life. And I got to put her hand in mine before I said goodbye, before she came to the antidote and kind of stumbled away and did her thing. So thanks for that, Canute. That's a highlight of mine. Another highlight is La Perouse Glacier. La Perouse was a French mariner who sailed into Lituya Bay in the 1700s, late 1700s. Had a bad time in there. Lost 22 men at the mouth of the bay in a tidal current. But his men, or someone, named a glacier after him. 2021, I went out there with Ben Gagliotti, who is with UAF. He spends a lot of time in Vermont now, too. But he's sort of Dan Mann's protege, interesting guy. And he also does really quirky, interesting studies. You see him there, he's got his red backpack on, that's La Perouse Glacier. It used to reach the sea not too long ago, in our lifetimes. It does not reach the sea anymore because it's retreating. And Ben was really interested in all those trunks standing up. They're all big old Sitka spruce mountain hemlock trunks that the glacier ran over about Civil War time, 1860s, and ran over them and has since retreated. So Ben's interested, he cores them, and he's interested in how trees react to a changing climate. Near the glacier, it's really cold, so it's got its own microclimate, and the glacier pulls back, it gets warmer. So he's interested in those trees and the live trees on the hillside. But I got to go camping with him. And these are cedars, dead cedars, and he would cut these, a few of them, and he would bring the rings back to analyze the trees and see what their lives were like and when they were alive and when they died. And they smelled really good because they were cedar, these little biscuits. There's me and Ben after another crazy hike where we were over that mountain, checking out another place. It was really difficult. We were crushed, pleasantly crushed. Many of you know that feeling. So this is one of the best campsites I've ever had. You can see Ben's tent there. You could see the tent fly of mine there. So we camped right in that ghost forest. And it was, no mosquitoes. There were hummingbirds, though. So these guys would visit that brand new landscape. And I had one of the most unusual, fun experiences of my life there. We were sitting around, like right around where this guy is, at our little lunch site. And I'm sitting there on a chair that he brought, and I got a big cracker with peanut butter slathered on it. And I'm talking to him. I had a bright red raincoat on. And I think that's what attracted this hummingbird. Look at this big flower. So the hummingbird's there. I'm talking to Ben, and then we're quiet because we're just watching the bird. So the hummingbird's hovering in front of me. Then all of a sudden he goes over to my cracker. He probes the peanut butter. I can feel the vibration through the cracker, and then he flies away. And then Ben, he's a real deadpan guy. He says, "I think you have superpowers now." So I sent this message to my daughter, Anna. And it wasn't an Anna's, it was a Rufus hummingbird, I learned later. So I had this problem the next morning. Hummingbird trapped under my tent fly. Don't worry, she got away. I think it was a baby because like mom was calling from outside. But how many times does that happen, Kristen? You're a bird biologist. Ever happen to you? Never. This was just last year. I've always wanted to go to this place. After I flew over it once, you can see it on this map. Even at this scale, you can see this circle of sand. Here's a better picture, Bill. It's 10 kilometers. It's a desert, this disk. And there's a little satellite dune field you can see there. It looks like a little octopus or something. So this is what it looks like when you're coming into it. There's dune fields all over Alaska. A lot of them are forested. But this one is active, as is the Kobuk Sand Dunes is a little far north of here. But this one always sort of intrigued me a little more. So somehow Karen Bodoni, this is the woman who's taking a selfie with her daughter, Ida. She knew somehow, I think through Facebook, that I wanted to go because I commented on a trip of hers a couple of years ago. She said, "Ned, I can get you out there. You got to do dunker training first." So about a year ago this time, I did my dunker training at the UAF pool and got to fly in with her, and we stayed for 9 days. So cool. This creature is only there in Alaska. This is a tiger beetle that's endemic to the Nagabahara dunes. It's a heat-loving creature. We didn't see him when it rained. It was only out when it was really warm. And they're fierce predators. It's not very big, about as big as your thumbnail. But very cool. Look at its, doesn't that look kind of like a tiger? Tiger's face, Tony the Tiger face. There's also all the Alaska animals, camels. No, there's no camels, but I was hiking solo one day, and you could tell by the willows the wind was at my back as I was advancing, and then I saw this little blackie tearing out of there, and I could see him for minutes as he went over dune and over dune and over dune. Yeah, just a really unique Alaska landscape. There were these oases all over that had spruce trees and ponds and wood frogs in them, like right in the middle of the dunes. So a lot of kind of cool things. And you'd see everything. You'd see old bones, and everybody's scat from last year. And this, we didn't see this. This was in the early 2000s. And Karen, my host, she stumbled onto this when they were coming back from that satellite dune. Looks like what? A pile of rocks or something. Very unusual because it's all kind of sand and a little vegetation. So these are pieces of obsidian. And obsidian is black volcanic rock, which is very useful to people who didn't have metal for several centuries, because you can chip it, and it's very strong, and you can use it as a spear point. You can use it to cut things, to scrape a hide. It was the currency of the times. And these pieces were all worked by humans thousands of years ago. There are several quarries, but not many in Alaska. There's one by Indian Mountain, which is between the Koyukuk River and here. And scientists can tell, okay, this obsidian came from Indian Mountain, or a big Athabascan name they have that I can't pronounce. And there's another one in the Wrangells. But this all came from the Indian Mountain site. But here they are. Somehow there's like 200 tools and pieces of tools in this desert. And how did they get there? Nobody really knows. Jeff Rasick, he's an archaeologist for the Park Service. He went out there with Karen and he recovered most of these. They're in the UAF museum now. And he was astonished too. It's like, I've been doing this my whole career and I'd never stumbled into a site like that. All these beautiful finished pieces. And his theory is also Karen's theory that someone was carrying a big bag of these things long ago, a toolkit, like a big toolkit, extremely valuable. And they left the skin sack or something and either forgot where it was or got killed or something, just didn't come back for it. So we're at that site on our last day there. She saved that one till the end, and we had a good weather day that day, so she brought us all. It was me, her daughter, and this seasonal tech for the Fish and Wildlife Service. She brought us back to the site, and it's pretty picked over. They got the pieces out of there, most of them. And there were a couple little pieces that they found. And I'm kicking around, I'm looking so hard because it's like, oh man, would I love to find something like that. I look all the time, right? You want to find something cool, some archaeological piece, right? Something that somebody's touched before thousands of years ago. But I never find any of that stuff. I don't have an eye for it. Fossils, same thing. I just don't have an eye. But then I'm walking along in my XTRATUF and I kick something and I look down. It's like a little potato chip. I said, Karen. So I found this thing. So cool. So yeah, that's a piece that has been worked, and it was larger than all the other teeny little pieces we were finding. And yeah, you can see the sun through it. Yeah, and it's extremely strong, like that. You could cut something good with that. And so I put it in my pocket, got the heck out of there. No, I dropped it right back on the sand and we walked away. So it's still there. Okay, thanks for hanging in there. The final place I'm going to take you is a place that doesn't exist anymore. It's an old dew line station in northern Alaska. Who knows what dew line stands for? Bill Stringer?
Distant early warning.
Could you say that again?
Distant early warning.
Distant early warning. What were they for, Bill?
They were radar sites,
Radar sites?
and they were also
White Alice. Good. I'm glad you knew that. One near Tanana, right? Yeah. We had them. Well, first, we're going to back up a bit. I saw Chris Arpin here. Where's Chris? I was on a trip with 3 guys. Took me on this amazing long trip. We went from Toolik Lake, which is lower right here, to Umiat, through all this Swiss cheese up to Teshekpuk Lake, where there's a cabin restored there. And then we took the other way back. It was a 1,000-mile snow machine journey. And yeah, I kept getting stuck and they kept pulling me out. Ben Jones was one of the scientists. He's the guy who took me up to Lonely. He wanted to go do a day trip up from the cabin at Teshekpuk Lake up to the Dew Line station at Lonely. So we went up there, took a few hours to make it up there. And here it is, ghost town again. I was so excited. That's me at Lonely. I had my own snow go. None of that stuff's there anymore. They dismantled all this. Government contractors from like Wainwright and Point Hope, I think, took it all down. It's gone. But it was there then. And Ben took this picture of me and he said, I'm going to wander around and put up my game cams just because I want to see what's roaming around here. And you go explore, he says. I'm like, oh yeah, I can explore on my own. So back to Dew Line sites, as Bill Stringer told us, they were strung out across the far north. That's where Lonely was. And that's where the one looked like in Lonely. There'd be dudes there, and it would be their job to do this all day and look for Russian bombers that are coming over the pole to bomb Washington, New York, Chicago. Never happened, but the Dew Line sites remain. So that long building I just showed you, see if we can go back. Yeah, that is a very long building with a radome on top. That's where the radar was, but this is where the dudes lived. It's where they watched movies. It's where they ate. It's where they did everything. They didn't go outside much, I don't think. So this building, I got to explore by myself. And I'll preface it by saying, Ben said, as he departed, he said, if you see a polar bear, just rev your snow machine, which didn't really make me feel too secure, especially because I got off the snow machine to check this place out. So I'm walking through there, and it's just amazing, right? Look at this. Broken out windows, all drifted in. There's me looking like an Arctic explorer in this old military mirror, right? Who's in the military? We've seen 100 mirrors like that over our careers. There's the bear signal, because it's right on the coast. That's where bears live, sea ice. Yeah, and all this cool stuff. I'm looking in every room, and there's your old telephone, your post office. And there was the place I was going to, right? I wanted to go all the way. I said, I'm going to go all the way down this corridor, and everything's fascinating. Every room is different, and it's still got stuff in there, so it's just really fun. So I'm creaking through there. There's a hint in this photo that something, but I didn't see that hint. Maybe you see it. But I got down to the end where that light was, where I was going to climb out and go back to the snow machine, and I saw this. I was like I am now. I was just frozen with fear. I couldn't move. I survived, and I sent this photo back from the Teshekpuk Lake cabin to George Durner, I think his name was. He's a polar bear scientist. And he sent me one line. He said, "Those tracks look really fresh." Yeah, so I'm in there and I'm thinking, I'm dead. It's really fresh. It knows I'm in here. The snow machine is way the other end of this building, and I got to go out the same way I came in. I'm not going that way. So I turn and I start squeaking. Oh my God, are your boots loud when you don't want them to be loud? You know, it's Arctic cold snow. Squeak, squeak, squeak. I made it out. I looked back, nothing followed me. I made it to the snow go. I was so happy. Started up. Oh God, I survived, I think. I think maybe I could outrun it if it came chasing me or something. Probably not, probably stupid. So I catch my breath there for a while. Ben's still overdoing his thing, and I say, okay, I gotta go around this building and see if there's tracks coming out of it. So I did. I motored around, and there's big snowdrift on the other end, and there are no tracks coming from it. So polar bears den in big snowdrifts. They have their babies in there, so maybe that's what it was doing. But yeah, I thought that was going to be the last picture I ever took. But I took a few more. Anyway, we made it out of Lonely. I made it here. That's my last story. Thanks to my girls for putting up with me when I take off all the time. Got 3 girls in this photo. There's another member of the family, Pepe. He's a northern Chihuahua. That's his actual size, by the way. So I'll stay here for questions, but I also have books for sale. I don't have Finding Mars, but I have other ones. And this girl's going to help me sell them. She gets a portion. So I'll be here to take questions before that. Thank you.
All right. Any questions out there in the audience? We have a couple microphone runners, so I'll run this to you. Pass that down.
Thank you. Of the 30 years that you've been doing this, do you have one spot that just it blows away every other one? Do you have a favorite spot that you've been to?
Ooh, good question. There's a couple really nice ones, like that campsite on La Perouse Glacier. St. Matthew Island's pretty cool too. It just didn't make the cut because I did this in practice and it was like an hour and a half. Sarah said, "No way, get your chainsaw out and cut off half that presentation." So St. Matthew probably. Dave Norton? Chloe, you can give Dave.
Yes, wonderful. I really enjoyed this. There is a lot of talk in people's minds who are looking at science these days that there's a lot of this silo phenomenon where people in one discipline aren't communicating particularly well with people in other disciplines. And they talk about silage. And I'm concerned about the tendency that I've noticed for less communication, less face-to-face exchange of ideas, scientist to scientist, say geology to biology. Have you noticed over your 30 years of association with this excellent program you're in charge of, have you noticed any difference in the communication systems among scientists, or are you so good at correcting it that you haven't noticed it?
Yeah, good question. Maybe the means we communicate by? Zoom, right? Less personal. People can just catch a Zoom presentation or something. And you're not really there to have that good talk afterwards, right, Dave? To say what you really want to say and talk about an opportunity or whatever. Just that camaraderie. Maybe there's a little less of that, perhaps. Rod, you got one?
I don't, but somebody else does.
Hello. I was wondering how, in your 30 years, have you decided what stories to cover?
Oh, good question. They kind of come out of the sky sometimes. Some of these trips I've initiated, some I haven't. People have asked me to do cool things. A few of them I've really wanted to do. Like, I really wanted to get to the Aleutians once. So I got with a guy from the Alaska Maritime National Wildlife Refuge. And because the column had been in the Daily News, he said, "Oh, I know you. Yeah, come on out for a couple weeks." And it was just an incredible trip to a place I really wanted to go. So they come from all over the place. And they got to come fast and furious because it got to be one a week, right? Seems slow, but it's fast.
I'm trying not to trip.
Rod's trying not to trip.
My question was stolen. Ned and I used to work together years ago, and this is Bob Grove. I don't know if you can see me or not, Ned.
Oh, Bob.
But
see
anyway,
ya.
I didn't have a question so much as I just wanted to thank you for writing your style. You really helped my son out, who's a journalist,
Oh, yeah.
who used to work in the same place you did.
He was an all-star, that's for sure.
Well, thank you. But anyway, I just wanted to comment publicly, thank you for that. And the other thing I wanted to say, they're the only person that I've ever known that went on their mountain bike down Murphy Dome during hunting season and got a moose and packed it out on their bike.
Never again. You do some things once, right? Never again. Too hard. Chloe, there's one right back there.
Were you able to write your own headlines for your newspaper articles?
Yeah, I usually suggest them, and they go with them. They don't change them much.
And I have one more question. How long does it usually take you to write 700 words?
It depends how desperate I am, how close my deadline is. The more times you go through a piece, the better it gets. I'll tell you that. I tell that to my daughter, and it's true.
All right, we have time for one more question from the in-person audience. We'll also, there's an opportunity to swarm Ned afterwards and ask him more
Swarming.
questions. So,
Yeah.
Swarming behavior.
anyone else on my side of the room or Rod's side of the room?
Yeah, Sarah, I got one over here.
Okay. I'm not going to trip either.
Who's going first?
I'm going first. Who raised their hand back here?
Really admire your writing, Ned.
Thanks,
I
John.
wonder, though, when I read, do you keep an article or two in advance when it just doesn't work?
Heck
you
no.
can't get it. Okay, good for you.
I wish.
Right, that's it for,
Wait, Sarah, I got one.
you got one?
Here. Yeah.
Okay, let's do one more.
I'm wondering if you could tell us about assignments that you've turned down, rejected, or pretended to be sick right before you went.
Oh. Nothing's coming to mind. I'm so desperate. I usually do them all. No, my favorites, are being out in the field, but that's a vast minority, right? Because I didn't go out in the field today. I didn't go out last week. It's hard to stack them up.
All right, we'll take a couple questions from online. If we don't get to your question online, we'll try to get it to Ned for you. What was the temperature from Ned's hummingbird photo?
Oh, that day, I'm guessing. I'd say 45. It was always kind of cold by the glacier. It was August.
All right, we have a question from Bryan on Zoom. Thanks, Ned. So interesting. Can you give us an approximate scale on the map of wolf territories? Many thanks.
Oh. Like how big? Knut, how big is wolf territory? I'm deferring. 200 square kilometers. I'm going to go with that.
All right, one more question from online. Did Dan find evidence of a possible human migration route on the terraces above Lituya Bay?
He won't tell me. Maybe.
All right, so that's all the time we have for questions. Again, swarm Ned afterwards if you'd like to. Thanks again, Ned. That was amazing.
You're welcome.